So today we're going to talk about the network capacity improvement that you can get through the use of a smart signal booster. And we also talk a little bit about how smart signal boosters fit underneath the general umbrella of small cells. So before we can do that, of course, we have to define what a smart signal booster is. And Ofcom, the UK regulatory authority, has actually done a lot of work on this to define exactly what they understand by a smart signal booster. And for them, they highlighted a specific number of criteria. For example, the repeater needs to have ERP of less than 24 dBm, so that means it's a localized repeater or localized signal booster. Ultimately, it needs to be under the control of the licensee, so the person who owns the spectrum, who owns the network, he needs to be able to control these devices and how they affect his network and how they provide advantages into his network. These systems also operate only on the licensee's frequency, and they only use his PLMN ID, so it needs to go and check specifically that the PLMN ID is correct and that it belongs to the operator of the smart signal booster. And then, of course, very importantly, it's not allowed to cause any undue interference on the network. The presentation specifically is about how smart signal boosters increase the capacity of the network, and clearly the interference that's presented by the smart signal booster has a fundamental impact on the overall capacity of the network. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later as well. And then, of course, the smart signal booster can only transmit the licensee's receive frequency. So the FCC in the USA has also done a lot of work on this, and they've actually been working on a set of rules that would define how smart signal boosters as well as broadband amplifiers would operate in the future in the US. So we expect these rules to be passed probably in the middle of next year. But they have really been developed in conjunction with many of the operators and also some of the manufacturers like Nextivity working together to set a set of standards that will make sure that we can have a smart signal booster that really provides advantages and capacity improvement onto the network. Also in Australia, ACMA has actually authorized the use of smart signal boosters only. Boosters such as broadband amplifiers, for example, are illegal to be used in Australia. But ACMA has looked at the smart signal booster category specifically and how they have interference protection mechanisms built in and how they improve the capacity of the network, and they've authorized the use of these types of devices on networks in Australia. So at Nextivity, we believe that a smart signal booster is really a low power access point with significant gain. The low power portion comes from the fact that we want to deliver this capacity enhancement and coverage enhancement in a specific localized area where the indoor coverage problem exists. And we also need to have the high gain so that you can actually provide the benefit over a large enough area. You typically want to cover a complete house or a small business area. You don't just want to cover one room. Also, smart signal boosters operate in the licensed spectrum band. So we take the signal from off the air and we boost it on exactly the same frequency at which we're receiving it off the air. And once we do this, it leads to the very next point that's extremely important, especially as it relates to the capacity of the network. Smart signal boosters need to have some capability to self-organize and to be able to be aware of their surroundings so that it can adjust the way in which it's set up to adapt to the network environment. It constantly needs to check what's around it, what the base station levels are at which it's transmitting, and what does the environment require from it to be able to deliver the maximum benefit to the subscriber, but always be network safe and always be sure that it doesn't impact the capacity of the network. Also, we believe that smart signal boosters do not require active management. If we look at the deployment cost of small cells, the operational expense is a major portion thereof, and we believe that because of the self-organizing nature of these smart signal boosters, we do not need to actively manage them. They are able to manage themselves and to automatically adapt to their environment. Of course, at the end of the day, the purpose of the small cells and the purpose of smart signal boosters is to improve coverage and quality, and then also specifically network capacity in a residential environment and in a small business environment. So we need to look then at how smart signal boosters fit into the overall small cell umbrella. And fundamentally, small cells as well as smart signal boosters want to do the same thing. They want to improve coverage, quality, and throughput for the end user. And they do it in very, very similar ways. So specifically, if you look at the frequency spectrum that's used, if you want to have the maximum gain in capacity with a small cell network, you'll deploy with a frequency reuse of 1. Same thing true for a smart signal booster. When we deploy smart signal boosters, we boost the exact same frequency as we use as a donor signal. So that's consistent also with the relay node approach, and it's the same as all of the original work that was done on small cells dating back more than 20 years. Secondly, if you're going to deploy a small cell, you're typically trying to solve a problem in a specific area. So the coverage footprint of your solution needs to be limited. In the case of a small cell, it's limited by the transmit power. In the case of smart signal boosters, it's also limited by the transmit power level of the coverage unit. And there are various architectures, such as, for example, a 3-hop architecture that would allow you to very clearly define the area wherein the smart signal booster would provide a coverage and a capacity improvement. And like I said before, right, if you deploy one smart signal booster in a network, you will solve the problem for one customer, but you won't affect the capacity of the network. So in order to really get the benefit of the capacity enhancement that's possible with smart signal boosters, you need to be able to roll these out en masse. And if you want to do that, then clearly you need something that's small, that's cheap, that's self-installable by subscribers, so that you can take these and put them in the mail and send it out to a subscriber and they install it on their own, and we don't have any issues with customer support, etc. So in order to do that, you really need to invest a lot of effort into the ASIC side and to be able to get something that's easy to install. And we've seen in the field that smart signal boosters are typically installable in 5 minutes or less by end users. And then finally, and very importantly also for the capacity of the network, is that the system must constantly be able to adapt to its environment. So this self-organizing concept and self-organizing network algorithms that are embedded in the smart signal boosters, they are extremely important, and they allow you to be sure that it doesn't matter what the scenario is in which you deploy the system, you'll always be sure that there's a capacity enhancement. In the case of the smart signal booster, for example, we constantly decode the base station broadcast messages so that we can understand what the path losses are to the base station, what the power levels are that the base station is transmitting at, what are we receiving it at, and using all this information to understand how the smart signal booster needs to be configured in every single deployment that it is in to provide the coverage enhancement but preserve the capacity of the network. So let's now look at the RF capacity enhancement that's possible in a network when you deploy smart signal boosters. And in order to understand the overall capacity enhancement that you can get, we need to look at both the uplink as well as the downlink and understand the mechanisms that are at play here. So if we look at the uplink capacity first, any system, any electronic system, any repeater, any booster has a specific noise floor that exists, and this noise floor is what we need to take care of. When this noise floor is boosted by the system gain of the smart signal booster, it rises, but once it's transmitted from the donor antenna and it goes all the way back to the base station, what we want to be sure of is that this noise floor goes through more attenuation than the gain that we put into the system. So the base station path loss is a very critical parameter to know. If we know that number, we can make sure that we set the system gain in such a way that the noise floor from the repeater is boosted up through the system gain of the booster and then drops all the way down, so that by the time that it arrives at the node B, it arrives well below the noise floor of the node B. And this safety margin, this is what ensures that even if you have multiple smart signal boosters deployed on a specific sector, that their combined contribution to the noise floor of the base station is negligible. On the downlink side, what we have is an improvement in the network capacity because we have to transmit less power to the subscriber that's now inside of the home in an area where there's bad coverage or where there's an indoor coverage problem. So typically at the base station, we need to set the transmit power level high enough such that the signal can reach all the way into the home and reach the handset there at a level that's appropriate for it to get the service that it needs. So if it's a voice call, you need less power. If you want to do high-speed data, of course, the amount of power that you need is increased. So where the smart signal booster comes in is that the signal is essentially sampled at the donor antenna, which is typically at the window of the home or at the window of the business where the signal is at its best. So the smart signal booster would grab the signal at this point and then increase the level through the addition of the system gain when it's transmitted then by the coverage antenna. Now, of course, there's still going to be some signal degradation through the path loss from the coverage unit to the handset, but still at the end of the day, if you look at the receive level at the handset, there's a big link budget improvement if you compare the level at which the signal is received with the booster on compared to the level at which the signal is received with the booster off. So that link budget improvement, that's what we're going to focus on next when we look at the overall capacity of specifically the downlink capacity of a cellular network. In order to simulate the improvement that one can see with smart signal boosters, we need to know what the achievable link budget improvement is that we can get by deploying smart signal boosters in a live environment. So the data that you see on the screen now shows some data that we've collected in deployments both here in the USA as well as in Ireland, and it relates the link budget improvement that was measured in a number of residential environments and small business environments. As you look at the graph, you can see that on average we were seeing 14 dB improvement in the link budget. So if you look at the 50% mark on the CDF, you see that it relates to about a 14 dB improvement in the link budget. So that's quite a big improvement, right? And what we wanted to know for the purposes of our simulation is what is a realistic number that we can use. And so what we did is we went to the 80% point, and you can see from the graph that for 80% of the time we can see at least a 7 dB improvement in the overall link budget. Now, of course, sometimes the improvement is a lot more as well. And if you look specifically at cases where we are at the edge of the network, the improvement can be as high as 30 dB. And of course, the probability of this happening is much less than it is to get a 7 dB improvement. So what we did is we used this data and the statistical distribution that we are showing here for the link budget improvement, and we took this and we embedded this in a simulation to show the overall improvement in the network capacity. So if you look at the simulation environment that we set up, we tried to take care of all the different aspects that eventually impact the capacity of the network. So firstly, we know that there are calls that are made both indoors and outdoors, and we need to allocate our subscriber population to be either situated indoors or situated outdoors. Now today, typically 70% of all mobile calls are made indoors, and so we allocated 70% of our subscribers to be indoors and 30% to be outdoors. Secondly, we need to define some mean level for the RSCP at the donor point or at the outside of the house. And what we did is, again, we looked at all the data that we've collected, and we looked at typical numbers that we see from network planning exercises, and we allocated a mean RSCP at the window of minus 85 dBm. And of course, around this, we had a statistical spread because not everyone receives the signal, of course, at minus 85 dBm. The other issue that we needed to model was the inter-cell interference, specifically at the cell edge. We focused here on HSDPA, in which you are only connected to one cell, right? So all the other cells that are around you act as an interfering source. And we modeled this so that the lower the signal level that the handset is receiving, the higher the interference level that it would see. And for all the simulations, we focused on using a UE, a category 10 UE, so that had a maximum speed of 14.4 megabits per second. Of course, the same argument can be used for 28.8 or 42 megabits per second HSPA users as well. So using this simulation environment, we looked at the link budget improvement, or how the link budget improvement translates into an increase in network capacity for a specific sector of a WCDMA network. So this graph shows the number of users that can be supported in a sector as a function of the total available power within that sector. And if we focus first on the area where there's 100 users, you can see that on the black graph, we have the total power that is required to service that 100 users. And on the blue graph, we have the same number, but now with 100% of the users that qualify for smart signal boosters actually having smart signal boosters. So again, these are the folks that are indoors, that have low inputs, that have low signal at their locations, and that could benefit from the use of a smart signal booster. So if all of them got a smart signal booster, then on average we see that you need about 1.3 dB of less power to service 100 users because you're deploying the smart signal booster. If you go look at the maximum number of users that can be supported by the cell, so the right-hand side of the graph, you can see that at the same maximum available power level, so 43 dBm, you can support about 70 more users in the sector by deploying smart signal boosters to everyone in the sector that requires a smart signal booster. So let's now look at how the sector throughput is affected by the presence of smart signal boosters in the network. So when you deploy the smart signal boosters in your network, the throughput per sector is improved because generally the SINR that's available to subscribers is improved. And the SINR is improved through two mechanisms that are brought by the smart signal boosters. Firstly, as we saw on the previous slide, there is now 1.3 dB more RF power available to be delivered to end users because of the presence of the smart signal boosters. So if we add this 1.3 dB in power to the signal that's transmitted to the end user, immediately you increase the signal and thereby you increase the SINR. And the improved SINR will lead to improvements in throughput. Secondly, as you can remember from one of the previous slides, we are grabbing the signal at the part in the house where the signal enters the house, and this is the point where the SINR is the best for the signal. And because we grab it at this point and we now overcome the path losses inside the home, the level of the signal at the subscriber is improved, and therefore its SINR is improved, and that means that the overall throughput is improved. So by using the same metrics that we were looking at in the previous slides, and in terms of the simulation setup, if we look at this slide where we show the maximum throughput on a per sector basis for the case where there is smart signal boosters present and for the case where there are no smart signal boosters present, you can see that you see about a 15 to 20% improvement in average throughput in a sector by adding smart signal boosters into the mix. In this slide, we show two different scheduling algorithms, one for round-robin scheduling and one for max SINR scheduling. And you can see that the max SINR scheduling actually shows a larger improvement than the round-robin scheduling due to the fact that the SINR for specific subscribers are maximized, and therefore the overall throughput for the cell is maximized as well. When you use round-robin scheduling, we see about a 15 to 20% improvement in the throughput if you have smart signal boosters present for every subscriber that can use the smart signal booster. So smart signal boosters can really play a major role as one of the tools in the toolbox for operators to solve capacity as well as coverage and quality problems for their subscribers. And specifically in the SME and residential environments, we've seen smart signal boosters be deployed with really massive benefit both to the subscriber and to the operator. Smart signal boosters are actually also the original small cells. If you go back 25 years and you look at some of the academic papers, this was what was proposed as the method to resolve indoor coverage problems and to resolve capacity issues and to resolve the quality issues that you have within a network. Today, with the advances that we have in ASIC technology and our ability to get the cost of these devices down, we're now at a point where these devices can be mass deployed and are being mass deployed in networks, and where subscribers are seeing the advantages of this technology. So smart signal boosters have been proven to be easy to install and have been proven to really provide a massive benefit in quality of experience for end customers. We have a number of operators across the world that take smart signal boosters and send them to end users either via mail or FedEx, and these subscribers have shown that they can quickly install it and really immediately get the benefit of the smart signal booster. What's also important is that smart signal boosters are applicable in all networks. You don't need backhaul or any other element to be present to be able to install a smart signal booster on your network. You can start quickly, you can start by installing one, and as you increase your population of installed smart signal boosters, you start to see more and more benefit in terms of network capacity. So smart signal boosters has been around now for about 5 years, and we've seen that through the deployments on multiple networks, and they are now being deployed in more than 100 networks across the world, that they can self-organize, that they can adapt to changes in the network, especially today with small cells like metro cells, etc., being installed in existing networks. You need to be sure that the smart signal boosters that are out there will automatically adapt to changes in the network. And we've seen this happen now in multiple networks across the world. And it's really this self-organizing ability and the ability of the smart signal booster to adapt to its environment and always make sure that it never impacts the uplink capacity of the network and always improves the downlink capacity of the network that's led to the broad adoption of smart signal boosters across the world. Thank you.